When you have to shoot, don't talk.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Trap House Podcast. My name's Justin Jett, and we have a different kind of show today. You can actually watch this show on the Hoosier Trapper Outdoors YouTube page, so you can see Charlie and I basically covering a few topics. We do a book review, talk about the new Duke 650 that's been out, kind of review of that, and along with some other things. So definitely a laid-back show approach, just Charlie and I. Before we do that, though, definitely want to give it up to the sponsors. We have the Hags Bracket, j30.com. Check out their website. Jeff makes a whole list of things, all quality-made products, like the Hags Bracket. So check them out at j30.com. Also, have to give it up for Top Lot Stretcher Company. Their website is toplotstretcherco.com. They have trapping supplies as well, but we're a big fan of their adjustable stretchers. We talk about them all the time. So check them out. Check their website out. And obviously, we have to put the plug in there for HoosierTrapperSupply.com, home with a top dog predator bait and jet fuel. Jump on our website, check out some things. Season will be here before you know it, so you got to get set up with lures, baits, and urines, all that good stuff. So HoosierTrapperSupply.com, check that out. All right, let's get to the show.
All right, welcome to our off-season Staying in Touch show. So we're not going to have a particular schedule for these. We're going to try to do one a month until the regular show comes out the 1st of August. I think it's August 5th, maybe, that the show comes out. It's the first Friday of August is when the regular Hoosier Trapper Outdoors show will come out. So we're going to do these.
These are kind of like bonus episodes, just to get us fired up, ready for season.
This is obviously a different format. We're going to be sitting in here and talking about the trapping stuff and trapping equipment, and I'm going to try to fit in a book review on each one of these. So anyways, start out with, I want to talk about flake wax for a second. Getting that time of year where people are thinking about making it, particularly as we move into the summer months. Obviously, the natural heat of the sun makes it a lot easier to make it. Generally a lot easier to find dry dirt or to dry dirt out in the sun if you spread it out. So just a heads up on flake wax. When it gets super hot, we try not to ship it if it's getting in the 90s or, God forbid, 100 degrees out. So just, bear in mind that if you do order it in the heat of the summer, we may wait a few days to ship for the weather to calm down if you order it at a particularly hot time. But it's definitely coming up on that time of year to get it made. We never seem to get it made when we're supposed to, but for those of you that think ahead, plan ahead, find time to do this stuff.
Right. And if you've never made it, we do have on our YouTube how-to section me making a couple batches. There has been a lot of questions about that. Some guys have trouble with the right amount of temperature and heat with scalding the dirt, actually, burning it. And that can be kind of off-putting to a coyote. So we might do a secondary video talking about that and maybe making it in a water bath.
That or maybe just the regular the old-fashioned solar method.
Yeah, if it's the dead of the summer, we could do that. It's kind of hard in Indiana. You get really nice days, and then next thing you know, it's raining. So you need a good stretch of hot weather. So maybe right in the middle of the summer, there's a few weeks that are perfect for it.
Yeah.
But say if it's not and you're in a pinch, you could do this other method I was talking about in the garage, one evening or whatever. So we'll get to that later, but just keep that in mind.
Yep. Now that you mention it, be sure to check out that how-to section on our YouTube page, because it's got the short reference videos on how to do particular things, anything from, like Justin said, making wax dirt to how to skin a coyote, how to make a dirt hole set. You can just go in, quick reference, and get a quick tutorial. So both Justin and I read Charlie Dobbins' Land Sets and Trapping Techniques book, and I first want to say that I don't I kind of go through phases, and I haven't read a trapping book for a while. So it was nice to sit down and read this book. Charlie Dobbins is obviously an iconic figure in the trapping, modern day trapping history. Prolific writer, prolific, very skilled, experienced trapper. Lost him a few years ago, but he wrote this book, and I guess it struck. It was. I like that he calls coyotes and foxes wild canines. All through the book, he doesn't say fox and coyotes; he says wild canines, which is kind of cool. I also thought it was interesting that there's no catch footage in here. There's no catch pictures. There's no animal pictures in this entire book.
I didn't even pay attention to that.
I think that's correct. I don't think there's an animal in a trap in any of this book. So if you're looking for a book with a bunch of fluff in it, this doesn't have that. So he's got a fair amount of photographs in here, but they all pertain to instructional what he's talking about. So
right. Like Charlie made that note, I made a note here that I really like, especially if I feel like this book could be across the board. It could be for the beginner, but it also could be for the advanced trapper for sure. Mm-hmm. You can pick up little things. But for the beginner, especially, in the back there is a list, there's a glossary page of words that he commonly use and people use in the trap world that if a new guy wouldn't know exactly what you're talking about,
Right.
Just the word dirt hole could mean a lot of things to people. When you say dirt hole set, hey, there's a little definition in the background to get you back on track to know what we're even talking about.
Right.
So,
or even the dog on a trap, which is I don't know where that ever came up with. That's a silly term, but the dog on a trap. So what's that?
Yeah, exactly. That was a cool thing I liked about it. Just that glossary.
I think he's got an interesting, and there's a lot in this book. It's 184 pages, which is actually a little unusual for a trapping book to have that many pages. So there's a lot in here. There's a lot to go through and to think about, and a lot of stuff that you can adapt to your style of trapping, without going completely to his style of trapping. Particularly if you've been experienced, obviously you can pick some stuff up. We get calls about people freaking out about the way urine smells. It's got an ammonia smell. Well, quite frankly, if it didn't have an ammonia smell, I'd be concerned about it. So he's got a good scenario in here. He says if he takes it out and he tests it in the early fall, and if the animal's actually rolling in it, then he feels that it's not good urine. And typically urine is collected, in a mesh bottom cage. The urine goes onto metal sheeting and then into buckets, and then it's strained and jugged up. So if those metal sheets are not kept clean, so there's food debris and droppings and all that urine basically has to then strain through that stuff, and then it goes in the bucket, and then maybe that stuff may even go in the bucket. So if that stuff's not kept clean, and if it's not emptied every day and strained every day, then that's where urine comes from. That's not as good. Obviously, the animal is responding to it if he's rolling in it, but ideally we don't want him rolling it. We'd rather have him peeing on it. So if that was as a territorial marker. Yeah. So curious about it. So and he says but if you've got good urine, if the urine's good this year, it'll be good next year if you've got some left over. Which I thought people get uptight about that too. He said just keep it in a cool, dark place. A refrigerator's fine. Actually, a shed is fine too if it's in the shade. Lure and bait, generally, as long as you keep it out of the sun, it doesn't matter if it's warm or not, it's fine. So, but the urine, a little more technical, or a little more critical in terms of keeping it a little bit cooler. You've got a cellar, basement.
Right.
He even suggests if you don't have that, just literally bury it in a shaded location. Bury it in the ground. One thing he did not mention in regard to urine is
airtight bottles,
and then removing the air from the bottle. In other words, if you got a 16-ounce bottle and you've used 8 ounces, so you got a half empty bottle. Ideally, you should take that urine then and put it into an 8-ounce bottle and get rid of that airspace in there. So I think keeping urine from season to season, absolutely no problem at all. The main thing is just getting rid of that airspace, keeping it cool, keeping keeping it dark, keeping it out of the sun. So.
Yeah, I mean, great thing that he touches on. Like Charlie said, there's not a lot of fluff with pictures and all that. He's pretty much down to business. Like, these are the tools. This is how I did it. This is how I, make certain sets. And one thing he doesn't mention in there, I was kind of surprised, really, just kind of animal behavior as far as the home range of certain canines, or how many are in a litter. I'm assuming he left it out because he wanted the book to be more universal across the, well, not universal, but across the country. It varies. So it really depends on what part of the state or what part of the country you live in.
I mean, he does have a section on some habits or whatever of each animal in the beginning of the book, but it doesn't go
as
into
far as
in-depth biology or anything like that.
Yeah, I just thought there would be more talking about home ranges, how many miles per, that sort of thing, to help kind of pinpoint how many are in a section, which he does talk about how he figures that out in here, which was very interesting too. But I just wanted to point that out. What else you got, Charlie?
I mean, I've been an advocate of using a piece of charred wood or adapting a piece of firewood at a set for curiosity, and he mentions that, and he's an advocate of that as well, as a curiosity visual attractant. So you got the smoky smell, then you got the color of the wood, which stands out from everything else as an attractant. And he attributes that to Tom Krause in a book that Tom wrote in the 70s, I believe, Dynamite Fox Trapping. And I initially read it or saw it on a Slim Peterson DVD, where he talks about charred wood or even just a piece of wood that's painted black. So it's kind of interesting. One thing I will say about Charlie's book is if there's something that he learned from someone else or that he talks about in here, he attributes to where he got that information from.
He gives him credit.
Yeah. Yep. And we've been this modern day trapping thing's been around. I'm gonna say the last 100 years is what I'm gonna call modern day trapping. So it's all evolved over time, and we obviously went through a big period of time where nobody would tell their secrets. Now it's all out there. You can pick up a book like this and get DVDs and check out YouTube, even though you got to sort out the junk. But it's all out there if you want to do some homework. So. I think one thing too, he mentioned several times in the book electronic squeakers, using those at your set. And over the years, on again, off again, particularly in the 70s and 80s, those would show up and they would be commercially sold. And I remember literally back in the mid 80s, we literally sold hundreds of them that people would put out by their sets as a audible attractant for fox, coyotes, bobcats, that kind of thing. I remember one that was a round ball, and I think it was a knockoff of a Christmas ornament that sounded like a bird that people would put in the Christmas tree. And the guy had taken that and then lined it up as to use for trapping. But none of those have stuck around. None of them have stayed in business. There was one, the most recent that I can remember was maybe the late 1990s or in the early 2000s. It was made by a company, they call it Trap Bait or something like that. Bought a few, but they went out of business about as quick as they started them. So it was kind of, I don't know what was up with that.
Yeah.
But
I started coming around here in early 2000s, and I remember you having some sort of electronic squeaker.
Okay.
And that must have been the last of them, because we haven't seen them since in here.
Kind of tells me that maybe they're just not that super productive. They're kind of expensive. They cost more than a trap, obviously. So, how many are you going to use? And then also,
it's one of those things, I don't know if it's necessary, but I don't think it hurts anything. So you really need it.
Yeah.
It's really up to the trapper.
Right. I think for cat trapping, it may have some probably more benefit maybe, or I've even seen people talk about, and not in this book, but seen people talk about buying little strobe lights and that kind of thing and putting it in the set. So one thing he talked about, and so here again, you read these books and you pick up a little tip. He's big on using eggshells as an attractant down in your dirt hole or something white. Clearly has been a good attractant for it. But just something simple as eggshells after you've used them in the morning or whatever, and just keep those and
save them.
Yeah, save them. So it got some odor to them. Obviously, if you keep them for a little longer, they have more smell to them, and then it's got the visual to it. So
Another one, you're talking about the charred log set. One thing he mentions, and it's a great topic, and a lot of people could probably talk about. I don't know if you wrote this down. He puts in there, once a coyote investigates a trap and doesn't get caught, he won't come back. So he puts another trap close by there.
yeah.
So did he fulfill his curiosity, is what he's saying, with that particular set, and now he's moving on? Because my opinion, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I could see how there are some coyotes would and wouldn't.
Right. I mean, clearly the idea of them being cautious or initially curious of the catch circle of one where you've already caught one, and then checking that out and maybe cautious about actually committing to that catch circle. Some of them, there's just too much coyote smell there, and picking them up at another location. I did read that, and I didn't fully agree with that, and I don't know, without having game cameras on those locations, that you can just say that. That was one thing that was like, well, I know he had a point, and there was definitely a point to what he was saying, and I agree with what he was saying, but to make that statement...
To be 100% clear, you would have to do the game camera thing, or...
Right. Just
with multiple situations.
And you couldn't just use one location with a game camera and have that say, okay, this is 100% true. You'd have to have it in different scenarios, different weather, different times of the season. So, but one thing that I think that I'm going to try this year is he's kind of, and it's a little more labor intensive, but you could just take a shovel with you and just make it in the field. He makes these mound sets, which would have a great visual attraction from a long distance of dug dirt. He pats them down and makes a hole in the side of it. And I think I'm going to try that, because once you get to that, we get calls on this every year, and I've addressed it in the past, is that December lull where they just, coyotes are, it's after the pup dispersal of trying to figure things out. And here in the big deer hunting states, they've dealt with all these dead deer, gut piles, wounded deer, that kind of thing, dumped deer, the people discard bones and whatever, so they've been eating good, so
getting fat.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm going to try this mound set out. So there's he's got a lot of sets in there that might be a little more labor intensive that I probably wouldn't do, but then he's got sets that in that instance might be worth occasionally throwing one in, particularly if things seem like they're a little bit stale. So I think
if you're trapping the guys that trap the same fields every year, then the few coyotes that got away from you, that shied away, they probably know what your set looks like the next season. So it'd be great to throw in like a mound set, like you said, or something different. I think it'd be a good idea.
So that obviously it's land sets and trapping techniques. So there's plenty of suggestions in there for. And he does reference some of his other books that he wrote, like Variations of the Dirt Hole, Variations of the Flat Set, in this book.
Yes.
But
covers quite a bit. There's some other cool little things I noted here that I thought were neat. And I'm sure that's been around, but I've never really been in areas where it was handy to me. As far as eye appeal, he's using the cattail fluff. Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of guys have done that, but I just never thought of that or really seen it, so I thought that'd be cool. Because that has that white backing to it.
Right.
So visually in it, and then it blows in through the grass or however you spread it.
And he did say once it gets rained on, it's done. It's if you've ever seen a cattail, the brown part of a cattail where it goes to seed, and you pull that out, it looks like feathers basically. And he's using that as to get around the feather law, or the law where you can't use animal parts, which is pretty ingenious.
I mean, it flows like feathers without using actual feathers, so that's pretty cool.
So if it gets rained on, then that's an issue. But oh well.
And then I like the old the tape cassette for flagging. Hang that in the tree, because you unwind a tape cassette. I'm sure you could get those at Goodwill for next to nothing now.
For those of you that are younger, it was a thing that used
you know what that is?
It was prior to CDs and DVDs, so
there was VHS tapes and cassette tapes.
The funny one is he even mentioned 8-track tapes in here, which was like, I mean, that only lasted for like a month.
So there's pictures of it in there. You just wads all that tape out of there, and then the weight of the actual plastic casing would hold that. You could loop it in there, and and that stuff would just blow in the wind, and the color of it was just like a natural brown, just enough to catch the eye of a bobcat is what he's thinking. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Kind of a retro.
Yeah, very retro. Yeah,
thing
now
to
you
do.
now you can just go buy some Christmas tinsel or whatever.
Yeah.
Could then too.
I just like the idea of it, so
Yeah.
put that down there. Another thing I thought was a bonus, a lot of guys think, well, land sets, we're talking, like he says, wild canines, bobcats, things like that. There are land sets for mink in here for people that are interested in it, so it's not, usually a lot of guys think mink, that's water, but you can make mink sets right on the water's edge.
Yeah.
Nearby. So I thought that was cool. We threw that in there. What else did you find that was, something to really point out?
One thing that it's not controversial, but it's something that I have gone. We haven't fallen into it. We tried it, and it was kind of a cutting down the pans of a trap, and he was an advocate of that. Felt like it eliminated his misses considerably when he cut the pan of the size down. Obviously, he wouldn't be in favor of the bigger pans on traps that some trappers put on and some trappers talk about. He felt like that pan they catch toenail on it or whatever, but as soon as you decrease it, then you have less likely chance of that happening.
Right.
I think I originally read about cutting the pans down in traps in Gerald Wieland's Longliner Fox Trapping, which came out back in the 1970s. I may be wrong on that, and I tried to locate one today, and I think I got it at home in my collection, but I think that's where I originally saw about cutting the pans down on traps, and that was the old pinch pan 1.5 coil Fox Trapping. So, I was talking to somebody the other day, and this guy was in his 80s, and very well versed in the trapping history and experienced trapper himself, and he referenced that government trappers that he had dealt with in the past all wanted their pans small. They wanted them cut down. So, I mean, he was scratching his head on this idea of the bigger pans. So,
yeah.
If it's working for you, great. You tried it on some.
I tried it and I did not like it. I had a lot of misfires, more than usual. Everyone has those from time to time. But I had a lot of flipped off traps, and I know that I feel like that was the only thing that I was doing different that was causing issues. So,
I mean, basically that pan's filling in the jaws of the trap.
Yeah,
so,
there wasn't much space. So if the coyote or whatever would step near the edge of the pan, it was probably getting flung out or only had it by a toe. Not much of any struggle at all, if there was. Most of the time it was just a flipped off trap. Got rid of those, cut them back off, and went right back to normal. Everything was good. So
yeah.
So I went down that road. I don't think I'm going back. I figured out myself what works for me.
Generally, I have found that if you go back to and I'm not going to call this an old book. I'm going to say if you went back to the old E.J. Daily books, which are pretty minimal in information, but the basic information is there, or if you go back to the old Hallbaker books, and there's stuff in there that, all this modern day trapping was developed off of that for the most part. So these guys that have been around a long time and have moved this stuff forward and progressed the techniques for trapping, that kind of thing, it's based on their years of experience and others in that field. So sometimes for things to make like a 180 is a little hard to believe. So I'll just stop at that. So
yeah. Another note you got?
I mean that's kind of we don't want to give away the whole
No,
thing.
I don't want to tell the whole book, but
what I think for the guy, there's some people that just like to make a lot of sets. So this is an ideal book for you if you like.
Yeah, there's quite a few different sets of similar, cross in between, and different.
So and there's a lot of people that just enjoy doing that. We kind of got the perspective if we're running a longer line and we're only going to be in an area, we're generally going to make dirt hole sets, flat sets, and we may make some urine post type sets, and that's generally all we're making.
Get in, get out, keep it simple.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. So, but if you run into a situation where things go stale and you're still trapping, and I think there's some great sets in here to make. And for those of you that like to just make different sets and see how the animals react to them, there's a lot of that in here, and I got to give him credit for that. So, and he developed a lot of that, I'm sure, himself. So,
yeah, years and years of
trapping,
being out in the field.
Mm-hmm. So he did some government trapping for this, I think, for some states. I don't think he worked for the USDA, but he did some government trapping. He mentioned in there. So,
yep. So what we're saying is we recommend the book.
We recommend the book.
Check it out. Charlie sells it here at Hoosier Trapper Supply. It's on the website, right?
Yep. And
so,
it was fun. It was funny. Somebody the other day called on the phone and they said, "Yeah, I'm still using this. It's considered kind of old school." Well, not really. And he was actually talking about a lure. So for those of you that think this might be old school since it was written a few years ago, it's not. It's all very valid information for present day. So definitely check that out. I think at minimum it's interesting to read, and there's definitely some things you'll pick up and some things that you can use on your line. So, and I want to mention that we owe these guys a debt of gratitude for writing this stuff and putting it down, because there was a number of years prior to 1970 that there just wasn't much information out there on trapping. Everybody was pretty tight-lipped and pretty secretive about things. And as things moved along, then and now it's just with YouTube and
it's everywhere.
All the DVDs and everything. I mean, you can find out a lot of information on trapping. It only take you so far, because you still got to get out and do it yourself and experience it. And while I will mention that real quick. So we sell those kits, and they all have our instructional DVD in there, and they watch the instructional DVD, and they go out and they set some traps. So once you have a baseline, once you've been out and trapped, then go back and watch that DVD again, and so much of it will make more sense, because you actually went out and did it. And even if you've had success, watch it again. I've had people tell me they've watched it 30 times. And I'm not saying you have to watch it 30 times, but it will give you, each time you watch it, as you progress with your experience, it'll give you a different perspective. So, and you'll find and notice new things. So with whatever you're looking at, it doesn't have to be our DVD or whatever, but with whatever you're doing, it's always good to go back and read some stuff and follow through, particularly when you're, especially when you're first starting out. And for all of us, it's good to go back to that. So, but anyways, we owe these guys that did all this.
Yep. Not just the Charles, but the Dobbins family and all the other great trappers that are out still doing it.
Yeah.
So. What else we got, Charlie? We're going to do a review on the Duke 650.
Yeah, we could. So, the Duke 650, this was the first year that it was out. Didn't hear any complaints about it. It's a big trap. It's a heavy trap. It's a strong trap, 4-coil trap. I talked to, in Indiana, it is not legal. There's no problem with the jaw spread going this way, but from the base, from the frame of the trap is way too long this way, and it's like an inch. So it's legal underwater. I think a few people actually bought them to trap beavers with. There's better beaver traps, but as far as a coyote trap only, it's a good trap. I talked to 2 trappers who I trust their judgment. I take their word. They both are very experienced. Both of them liked the trap. Were very pleased with the trap. They both pretty much said if it's a coyote trap only, it doesn't catch other stuff. It's too big and too heavy. So
and they ran a lot of them. I mean,
yeah.
What he had like 15 dozen. And
the one guy had 15 dozen, yeah, and the other guy he had bought a bunch too. So and they were. So anyways, they were very, very pleased with the trap. But obviously check your regulations in your state on this trap, whether it's legal or not. Like I said, here in Indiana, you cannot set it on land. It's just too big. And we have very trapper-friendly regulations. And initially, I thought this trap was legal, but
I had it checked out at. I had to find out myself. It was at the ISTA convention this past fall, and they pulled the tape out. DNR officer, we measured it right there on the spot, and he said, "Nope."
Yeah.
They got the columns that show you, okay, it fits in this bracket, but not in this one, so that takes it out of legality. So.
Right. Yeah. So for here in Indiana, it's a no-go, but a lot of states it is, and obviously there's states that not even close to that, even measuring it the other way. A couple questions that we get. One is out-of-state trapping trips. How do you go about it? And I actually, we've addressed this a number of times, and I don't want to get really extensive here, but there's kind of two ways to go about it. So first off, if you know someone in and out of state, particularly if they're a farmer or a rancher, then you've got an immediate in, and you could work off of that. Or you got friends, that are outfitters, or if you've been hunting with somebody, sometimes you can work your way through that. But if you're just randomly looking for a place to trap, the first thing that you want to look for is check some states that you're interested in going to, and then request the trapping regulations from that state. Go through those, see how trapper friendly they are. All state regulations are a little bit different, and then and make sure you wouldn't have to just buy a whole new set of equipment. And then from that point, then go to see how much public ground they got, national forest ground, that type of thing, and then what the regulations are for trapping on that ground. And that's probably, in a nutshell, the most important things to look for when you're going out of state. Obviously, license costs for non-resident trappers are fairly expensive in all states. I've never been in one that was what I would call reasonable. Michigan wasn't bad. But the trapping regulations, the first point that you look at. Second would be then how much public ground is available. And then the other thing is, when you go late. Don't go. I wouldn't go anywhere prior to Christmas, really. The way the hunting seasons are, that kind of thing. And that's not a blanket statement, but it's close to a blanket statement. If you're on public ground, I would avoid going prior to Christmas.
It's too many issues and
too many people hunting. Too many, that you're going to have. Particularly, you never want to go when gun season for deer is in, or if you were in the western states where they have pheasant season. That's another one. You never want to go when they have pheasant seasons in. So, but that's kind of the gist of what you're looking for, on an out-of-state trip. Another one that, some trappers make a set and they'll bed the trap, make the trap sure the trap's not tippy, which he talked quite a bit about in this book. Right?
Yeah, I didn't want to. Yeah, he does.
He gets into that, and then we use in freezing weather we use a fair amount of cover holes, and sometimes peat moss, but generally we use cover holes. And someone was concerned that I was making a set and then I wasn't packing the dirt on the finished set after we sifted the dirt or whatever. And generally, I mean, if you've bedded your trap very well, that loose dirt on the top. For one thing, if there's cover holes down there and you put a little dirt on top of that, you're not packing that anyways. So the different, and depending on the soil, sometimes we will. Generally, just leave it up to the judgment of the terrain, the soil that you're in, that kind of thing. We don't do a lot of that packing the dirt, but
I could see if you're working with a big bed area, getting all that, but we're trying to keep our sets relatively tight.
Right.
So there's not a lot of area
right
to be packing in the first place. There shouldn't be, with how we operate. But sometimes there is if there's roots or rocks or stuff in the way, and you gotta.
Right.
But it's generally for us not too much of a problem, I don't think.
Right. And if it's working for you, then do it. That's fine. So in your trap bed area should not be that big, but because then it's like they don't know where to step. So I try to direct their foot in the proper place. I think that the couple questions there. One thing we're in the orders that everybody places, we're putting stickers in there. So we got our Hoosier Trapper Outdoors sticker, and we've also got the coyote, or this coyote head sticker those are free in the orders, and we will change these periodically. So stick them on whatever, and then collect them or whatever.
Gotta collect them all.
Yeah, I've got all that like wipe off type siding in my first shed where you can keep it somewhat clean. So I just started state association stickers, whatever, just start lining them up. So, anyways, kind of cool. Just doing that. Those are available. Those are coming through on orders. Got that coming up.
We have a big day coming up. After a long year of COVID, we're going to try and have our convention this season. We should be able to, here at the shop, the last Saturday in September, our rendezvous for 7B, Chapter 7B.
Yeah, fur takers.
So we're really excited about that. We missed it last year. Definitely missed it.
Sure did. I will say the day that came around, which is always the last Saturday of September. This should be September 25th. We have the rendezvous. But last year when that day, it was the weirdest.
A sad day.
It was
sitting in here at the shop, and it's like, man.
Yeah, it was very sad. It was very.
So mark it, September 25th this year. Come on out.
Yep.
It's going to be a good time.
We will also be at the FTA convention, national convention in Clarksville, Indiana. That's in June. And then we will be at the NTA convention in Spencer, Iowa in July. So definitely stop by and say hello if you're at those conventions. Look forward to seeing everybody. Like I said, after a year of canceled conventions, we're looking forward to getting back and seeing everyone again. So it'll seem even more special, I think, this year after all of that, for lack of a better word. So, and then we'll attend a few state conventions this fall too. So right. Probably go over to Illinois and do some other ones too.
So yeah, we're thrilled to do that. Before we sign off here, we definitely like to talk up the state organizations on. And also the national level organizations, the Fur Takers of America, National Trappers Association. We'll even throw in the Sportsmen's Alliance. Anything that, supports what we do as far as trapping, we encourage everyone to join. Join them all if you can. Do whatever it takes at this point, because as a lot of you know, we've been getting hammered by antis and regulations to try and shut down what we love. So
Right. So if any of you listen to the podcast that we did with Kent Weil and Dave Hastings too, they talked about, so you go to talk to a representative at your state house, and they say, well, how many members do you have in your association? And Kent's like, well, if you gotta say you got 200 members, and they're like, okay, so in their head they're thinking 200 votes, and so. And then somebody else comes along and they've got 2,000 members, and
the Humane Society has a list that goes on forever saying we don't want this.
Yeah,
put it that way. Versus our little 200 group.
So we need to say that we have so many members, and a lot of people feel like, well, I don't really need to be a member.
I don't make a difference.
Yeah, I don't make it. Yeah. Just being a member and being able to count you as in that group is definitely a positive. So, and as Justin said, we are under a lot of pressure. We have been this spring. So, and it only continues to get worse. Actually, it seems like each year we face some new challenge in several different states, for sure. So. Very important. You don't even have to get that involved, but that all associations will take people that want to volunteer their time, but just join, and they'll all give you something back. I mean, the NTA gives you a magazine, the FTA gives you a magazine, Sportsman Alliance has a mail newsletter that they send out. So,
heck, Sportsman, look at these fancy cups they give you.
Yeah, they get certain levels of support, and they give you whatever. So and. The NTA's got a thing right now where you give so much money and they'll give you different levels of gifts like that, even a hoodie or whatever. So, anyways, can't say enough about getting involved in association to protect trapping and hunting both, but trapping particularly, we're under a lot of scrutiny. We're low-hanging fruit for sure, easy to pick on. So,
first line of defense.
Yep, exactly. For everyone. For everyone. So, yeah.
Yep. So, that pretty much sums it up, doesn't it, Charlie?
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little new format we're going to do. It's kind of a little bit informal, but...
yeah, leave a comment. Let us know what you think about it, or maybe other topics. And always ask the questions. Charlie brings those up, and the little Q&A segments. We'll keep those always going. So...
yeah, and we'll do it again. We'll try to do one in June prior to the FTA, and then we'll do one between the FTA and the NTA maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe one after the NTA, but we're getting close to doing the regular show. So I don't know. We'll just play it by ear. But we're like I said, these aren't on a regular schedule, but we'll try to do a couple more at least. So,
all right.
Appreciate you joining us.
We'll see you next time.